Everyone to another episode of our year end in July series. I've got two amazing guests with me today from Pursuant and Allegiance Group. And our topic today is stewardship and its role at year end. And before we get into our topic, I'm going to ask my guests to introduce a little bit about themselves to our audience. And so, Debbie, you're at the top of my screen, so I'd love for you to go first.
Sure, thanks. I'm happy to join today. So my name is Debbie Merlino. I'm Executive Vice President for Client Relations, and the clients that I work with most often are in the public media and arts and culture space. And my role really is to help ensure that our clients in those verticals are getting all of the best thinking from their day-to-day account managers, and that we're leveraging the learnings within those different accounts so that all of the Allegiance and Pursuant clients are getting the best thinking from all of our team members.
Kim, you and I have had the privilege of working together for several years now, but I'd love for you to reintroduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. I'm Kim Richardson, Associate Vice President for Client Strategy. I've been here at Pursuant for almost 11 years. I can't believe it. And it's been a great ride, and got a chance to work with so many amazing nonprofits doing great work in the world. I have worked across our different verticals, but the kinds of organizations I work with most and that are near and dear to my heart are faith-based clients. I'm also involved with a lot of our solutioning for new clients, and just working with our team, just like Debbie, to make sure that we're bringing forth the best work for our clients and helping to raise more money for their incredible missions. So I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, really glad to have both of you. And Kim, something that I love about your background that I think doesn't come up enough is you actually used to work for Hallmark, which I think is especially appropriate given our topic today because with Hallmark is what everyone thinks of when it comes to sending warm messages of gratitude, I think. And so I'm really glad to have that in your wheelhouse of expertise on this topic.
Yeah, that's, the expressions of thanks and love and all the things that go into Hallmark cards is definitely something I've been able to bring to bear in my work with nonprofits and
Yeah.
donors.
What are some strategies that you can implement in the lead up to your end to make that appeal really strong?
Sure. I think one of the things that organizations, well, actually, a few of the things that organizations can do as they kind of go into this huge giving season. We'll talk later on in our time together about the things that should be happening along the way, because it's not, we don't want these to be just sort of these episodic moments that don't really build relationship. But as we think about those things, that maybe just real specific things that they can do as they go into that calendar year and time frame, is providing a recap of some of the accomplishments that have happened like throughout the year. And that can be done in a newsletter or an impact report. I think it's another great time to send out those special gratitude thanks. Obviously, in November, Thanksgiving is a and time of gratitude that people are thinking about that as they go into that. Even better if it's handwritten. That's something that you can get your volunteer team to do, or even staff members. The other thing that we've done that's been really fun has been some kind of digital engagement. So whether it's a quiz or a game, it could be something related to the holiday season that has then a free download that has information or tips about celebrating. You can have recipes. For a lot of our faith-based clients, their donors are interested in keeping kind of the Christ in Christmas, if you will. So Advent guides and those types of things that really help people prepare for the holiday have been, it's kind of a gift thing that's for me. And so that's seen as a really big benefit. Some of the other things we've done is voice broadcasts, where there's a message that comes out from the leader of the organization right to the donor's phone to thank them. Also videos from the population that's being helped, or even the staff. If you're a local community event, I know Debbie works with some of those kinds of organizations. Having an in-person appreciation party is another thing that's really helpful. And then kind of a big one that people don't think about as much is if there are any complaints or issues your individual donors have had, resolve those before you go into this heavy giving season, to make sure that you've kind of created that goodwill, and it makes it a lot easier for people to make that decision to give and support your organization.
So I really like that Kim touched on really almost every different type of channel, right? So she talked about in person and email and direct mail and events and all of those types of things, which is great. And it's so important. I mean, one of the things I think I see most often that's really a little disheartening is I think everybody in their calendar year-end schedule has almost the obligatory cultivation or stewardship email around Thanksgiving. And they schedule that as though that's the one time of the year when we're supposed to do that. And that is a perfect time, for a thank you message, as Kim said. But I think that that can't be the only time. And to Kim's point, email can't be the only channel by which we're talking about how gifts were used or thanking donors for their past contributions. And I feel like where that comes from is I think that nonprofits are feeling squeezed more and more often. Either they have fewer staff or fewer resources. And so oftentimes one of the first things to get cut are often stewardship, cultivation, or thank you communications, because there's no immediate return on investment. But I think the more important way, or maybe the deeper way to look at that, is without having these thank you communications as part of a regularly scheduled communication calendar throughout the year, you won't have donors to thank come next year, calendar year end, right? Because there's too much competition for the philanthropic dollar. And that donors really aren't, can't be treated like ATMs, and we can't just reach out to them at Thanksgiving. It has to be, something that's really part of the ongoing two-way communication with the donor.
Absolutely, Debbie. I love that. You're so right. And it's funny sometimes when we look at even a donor's like gift trajectory, it's going like this, and then all of a sudden calendar year in, it pops way up. And so it's because there's so much asking that's going on, but a lot of what needs to happen, and even in order to get that pop at the end, is that ongoing stewardship and cultivation throughout the year. Another, just as you mentioned, thinking about email that comes to mind for me is especially those organizations that only have a few asks, just having that anniversary email to remind people of, you did this last year you gave, and here's the things that we've done since you gave the last time. So celebrating even what donors have already done is a part of, we talked about impact reports and we talked about those other thank you notes, but that anniversary email is another way to kind of celebrate what's being accomplished because the donor gave.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that when we're thinking about how our clients can sort of think about those cultivation communications, even if they are limited in scope with the number of channels that they can use, I think one of the things for them to think about is that the communications don't always have to be the same. So think about varying the types of things. So whether it's, to your point, Kim, sharing about here's what we did with your last gift, here's like an impact report, as you mentioned, things that were accomplished during the past year. But then also another type of cultivation message can have a goal of deepening the relationship between the donor and the organization. So also just sharing about different ways for them to get involved. So maybe a cultivation message can be not just a thank you for your past gift, but did you know that these are volunteer opportunities, or an opportunity for the donor to share more about themselves so that you can start to get to know them better and then move to what really the intended goal always is to get to that sort of two-way communication with the donor and not have them just feel like they're a number, but to have them feel seen and known and understood.
Definitely.
I love that you brought that in. I love both those points that you brought in about messages that coincide with things that are happening in the donor's world, because it's so much more personal. And something that I particularly love about the tactic to send them something on an anniversary of their first gift, or or if they've been a donor with you for 10 years, like a 10-year anniversary, like thank you message, and with like, here's the things that have happened in the 10 years since you've been a donor, like that kind of thing. Because there's a lot of nonprofits that will do things like birthday cultivation messages, and they don't actually have accurate data around their donors' birthdays, and so sometimes that they don't even have the right birthday month. And so what I love about that from just a practicality standpoint is, like, that's data that is yours, that you actually have, so it can be you can be accurate in that personalization. And then another thing that kind of comes to mind for me is I think that I would love to get your perspective on ways that you can use passive donation forms or passive donation opportunities in these cultivation and stewardship outreaches, in ways that may actually result in some revenue.
Sure. One of the surprising executions that we did last year with a client was sending out we did it both online, but we also sent a printed piece that had a donor survey on it. There was not an ask in the survey. There was a return envelope to return the actual survey back. And we were blown away at the number of donors who actually sent a gift with the survey, and just said, thank you so much for allowing me to provide my input. So things that, we're looking at, that, and newsletters are the same. There's some organizations that we've worked with where their newsletters outperform their direct ask appeals, because it's reporting on the how the mission is actually being fulfilled through the generosity of donors. So there are, to your point about I guess we would call it a little bit more of a soft ask, or maybe there's an implied ask. But even with a survey, that was something where we didn't even ask for a gift. But the gratitude of actually being asked their opinion came across. And so the donors responded in kind.
I think that's a great story. We've had similar experiences where I can think of sort of one client of mine in particular, where they have, and this is sort of a 365 activity that they do, but every day, all the team members make 5 calls a day to donors. Now, that doesn't mean that they are able to reach 5 donors every day, but part of their to-do, every staff member in the development team, is that they make 5 donor calls a day. And those are just meant to be thank you calls. To your earlier point, Kim, also asking about, are there any questions that you have for me? How are things going? Is there anything that I can do for you? And those types of calls, again, will result in these surprise gifts. And it's that human interaction, right? Again, there's a lot of competition for the philanthropic dollar. And I think that the organizations that have this thoughtful approach to how the relationship that they want to cultivate with their donors, in the end, will be rewarded for that thoughtful approach and for creating true and meaningful relationships with them. And asking their opinion, reaching out to say thank you, that's all part of having, an authentic relationship with the donor.
I'd love to get your take, Debbie, on how stewardship looks at some of the types of organizations that you serve. I know for me, the arts and culture organizations can look a little bit differently from some other nonprofits, and then especially with public media. I'm curious, based on your experience, what are some of the approaches that you see within those verticals of the nonprofit space specific to stewardship practices around your end?
Sure. So I think public media in some ways is a bit of a unique zebra. So in the public media space, a lot of stations, more than 50% of their donors are recurring donors or sustainers. And that it becomes very important when you have that great a number of donors that are giving on this regular basis to really be mindful about those cultivation and thank you communications and not just set it and forget it, right? And being able to, make that case, I think, to upper management where they sometimes feel like, this is perfect. We have all these people giving an ongoing monthly donation. We don't have to do anything. It's super efficient. Just let it ride is the worst thing that you can do. So oftentimes what those communications look like is sometimes we've taken, a sort of large annual report like you might send to your most generous major donors, and whittle that down to almost like a little 6-panel brochure, and sent that in a closed face envelope with what we call a little I love you letter, a closed face envelope that's hand addressed or appears to be hand addressed, like with real pen technology. And I will tell you, because I get samples of every client's mailing for everyone, every year when I get those, I don't know why I think that Minnie has sent me a letter to my home, but I am caught off guard every year as if we haven't been doing this with them for 5 years. And I always open it up. But it's great to sort of see that type of impact report in that manner. So you're taking content that was already created for a different group of donors and distilling it down for another group of donors. Postcards are another inexpensive way to send a thank you that I think is something that also can get donors' attention because it is so graphic in nature and they don't have to break through the seal of an envelope to be able to see that thank you message. So one of the things that I always recommend is oftentimes clients will talk about all of our stewardship is via email. We have a limited budget. It's always via email. But if you do that, you're not hitting everybody because you're not going to have an email address for everyone, regardless of how hard you try. So a postcard is another low-cost way to break through the clutter. And again, like I talked about in that earlier example, having, an initiative where the staff tries to make 5 calls a day is a great way to really divide and conquer. And again, break through, to break through to the donor and make sure that they do hear from you.
Yeah, Debbie, the other great thing about a postcard is that it allows you to also maybe do a video or something because you can include a QR code there that then takes folks to a landing page where video is there. And perhaps that's another way to even capture that email information if there's something once they get there that they can get or they can download. It just provides another way to give them that multi-channel experience with you. And we know how great videos are, whether that is a thank you video from the leader, from just the staff and team, or those who are actually being helped by the mission. I mean, you can get so fun and creative with the video, and it's, just the interactive nature of it, actually seeing people or animals, whatever the cause is, and being able to experience that is just super cool. So,
Kim, I'm really happy that you brought that up because I was actually in a call the other day and we were having a strategy call with a client. We were talking about video in terms of email. And I think one of the things that organizations sometimes feel like is that they need to have this highly produced, very carefully curated email if it's going to go to their donors. And, Leah just mentioned that a number of my clients are in the public media space. And so they have, where they go to work every day, like very sophisticated recording equipment, television studios, all of that. But this particular client, they did it with their cell phone, right? So they have all of that equipment available to them that other nonprofits might not have. But at the end of the day, they got an extremely high quality, but again, very authentic type of message through a cell phone video because nobody felt intimidated, right? So it was a great way to do it. And I think you're right. That's something that people want to be sort of let in behind the curtain, so to speak. And, Leah, you also asked about arts and culture organizations, and that's one thing that we talk about, and we use that term sort of behind the curtain a lot with arts and culture organizations, is let them see what's going on backstage, right? Whether backstage is where you're taking care of animals or where you're putting on, about to put on a performance. But that's where donors really get to sort of know you behind the scenes, see what's really happening. What is it like to be in your shoes and deliver that mission, and give them that little peek behind the curtain, whether that's with a cell phone video, email, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really important thing to bring in, especially when it comes to stewardship messages, because especially given the prevalence of like YouTube vloggers and social media, like people who normally you might see up on, like on a movie screen, are sharing pictures of what they did for Father's Day, and it's just a picture they took on their cell phone. Or they're sitting in the chair getting their makeup done and just having a conversation with like their makeup artist. And we've become so accustomed to these really informal types of media that feel really personal and really immediate, even if in this instance there's millions of people watching it, and there's probably some kind of artifice behind it to make it look a certain way. But I think translating that to stewardship, it can be so powerful to just, like you shared, like record a video on your phone as you're about to like board an airplane, but you just want to say, hey, I've got 2 minutes. I'm the executive director. I'm about to go to one of our partners who's doing something in the field, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to our donors. And it's very inexpensive. I think one of the things that you brought up that so many organizations are facing this year in particular are really tight budgets and limited resources when it comes to staffing. And so I think getting really creative and kind of using tools that you already have to do this really highly impactful type of cultivation is, just thinking outside the box is something that we should all be pushing ourselves to do. If we're just thinking about some key principles that we can think about when it comes to stewardship at year end and then throughout the year, what are some just easy ways that we can remember those key principles?
Sure. Yeah, I was just trying to, sometimes we listen to these things and there's so much great information that we're kind of like, what do I hang on to and make sure that I really internalize. And so, as we think about our nonprofit organizations, ultimately they want to continue to do the things that help to solve the important problem that they're trying to solve, and to grow the number of supporters that come alongside them with that. So with that in mind, I created a little bit of a mnemonic device from the word grow. So G is just for gratitude. So we want to make sure that we're thanking donors often and sincerely, and profusely, if you will. That's so important to them, knowing that what the work that they're supporting in how the organization is so thankful for the gifts that they're giving to continue that support. R is for reporting the impact. So telling them what's been accomplished because of them is super important as well, because that continues to make them want to give, because they know that their gifts are being used in the way that that was actually asked for. O is for own and correct mistakes or issues. And this is one that sometimes organizations don't think a lot about, but here's the reality. No person nor organization is perfect. So to the extent that we can be transparent, offer an apology, and correct the situation, it's only going to come to build goodwill with that donor. And then finally, W is for welcome. And there's two parts to that. So we want to make sure that we adequately welcome our new donors to the organization, and to that giving family. So through those, whether it's a call or a welcome kit or something that acknowledges that they're new to the family, And we're so glad that they're here. And then also welcoming feedback from our current and lapsed donors to help improve the overall donor experience. These are folks who have loved you, who have given to your mission. They're just as invested, and they want to be able to provide input and feedback to make sure that the mission continues and is successful, and even, offer some ways to improve how the organization stewards and really interacts with those donors. So again, grow gratitude, report impact, own and correct mistakes or issues, and then welcome.
I definitely want to, I think, have that printed and put on my office wall somewhere as like a fun poster. So thank you so much for that really helpful set of tips, Kim. And thank you, Debbie, for joining us. Was really glad having you on the show today, and I look forward to learning more from you as we continue these conversations in the months ahead.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.